In last week's episode, I talked about gaining weight and more specifically COVID weight gain and why it's really not that big of a deal. It really isn't. However, having a nervous system that is out of whack, that sort of is a big deal. So in today's episode, we're going to talk about a couple of really simple things that you can start to do to bring some balance back into your nervous system. It has nothing to do with gaining or losing weight. Stay tuned.
You're listening to the Wellness Simplified podcast. Simple wellness tips to help you improve your life without turning it upside down. With your host, award-winning fitness instructor, nutrition coach, and wellness expert, Susie Fevens.
Welcome back to the podcast, and for all of you who sent me lovely messages about last week's episode, thank you. I really appreciate it, and I hope that it was helpful. I hope that if you have been sort of beating yourself up over gaining some weight this last year and a half, whether it was because of COVID and the stresses of that, or if it was just because of life, I hope you're feeling a bit better. And I also hope you went and bought some pants that fit, because everything seems just a little bit better if you're wearing pants that aren't too tight. So today's discussion is not a discussion about weight loss. Today's discussion is a discussion about the nervous system and trying to bring some balance back into the nervous system, because let me tell you, a lot of us are running on our sympathetic nervous systems way more than we should be right now. It should be a balance. And that's not to say that half the time you should be in your sympathetic and half the time you should be in your parasympathetic, but you should be able to flip-flop back and forth pretty easily throughout the day. Think of it like a light switch that you can go from on to off, on to off. And it's not that simple. That is an oversimplification. But if you think of the on switch as your sympathetic, the off switch as your parasympathetic, it's a decent analogy. It's not by any means perfect, but it's a decent analogy that when you're on and you're going, you're sympathetic, and when you're chilling and resting and dark, that is your parasympathetic. Again, that is an oversimplification, but it kind of gets the point across. Another analogy I like to use is a car. That your sympathetic is like the gas pedal and your parasympathetic is the brake pedal. So you don't want to have your foot on the gas all of the time. You don't want to have your foot on the brake all of the time. And it doesn't need to be a 50-50 split. You just want the gas pedal to work when it's time for the gas pedal to work. And you definitely want the brakes to work when you need the brakes to work. So that's what we're looking for with our nervous system. We just want it to be in a place where it's going to do what we need it to do at the time we need it to do it. But there are a few problems, because we have our reptilian brain, which is the part of our brain that doesn't know that we're not like living in caves and hiding from saber-toothed tigers, and it just reacts to stress the same way that it has for hundreds and hundreds of years. And as soon as it senses stress levels, it assumes the worst. Always assumes the worst. Remember, we learned last week that our body's job is to keep us alive. So it does that partially by overreacting a little bit. It would rather be a very, very strict parent, a very cautious parent, than a reckless one. So it reacts to every stress as though it is life-threatening, even though lots of times our stresses aren't life-threatening. And we end up with extra cortisol pumping through our body, and then we run out of cortisol, we're going with adrenaline. It's just the whole thing, and we're not going to break down all of the systems in the body, but suffice to say, you don't want your foot on the gas pedal all of the time, nor do you want it on the brake pedal all the time. But a lot of us are like flying down the road with our foot tramped on the gas pedal, and we can't lift it. We can't lift it. We can't even get to the brake because we're so forcefully stuck on acceleration. So what do we do? And what correlation does that have to weight? Now, again, this is not about weight loss or weight gain. Some people have gained weight in the last year and a half, and that was weight that they needed to gain. Some people have gained weight and maybe they're a little bit higher than they would like to be, but they're still healthy, so it doesn't matter. Maybe some people have lost weight. Who cares? I don't care. truly. I don't care. I do care about your nervous system though, and one of the ways that your body handles stress is with cortisol, and cortisol is notorious for helping you put on weight because, as I said, it's always thinking worst case scenario, and it's like, oh my gosh, we're going to have a famine. We're going to have a famine. We need to increase fat stores. When in reality, maybe you're going through a divorce, right? You don't necessarily need, like, there's not a famine on the horizon for you, but your body acts the same way. And again, a lot of people also will react with stress by losing weight. It's very interesting how we're all the same yet also different, but weight can be a symptom or a side effect of an unbalanced nervous system, but not always. Sometimes not always. So take that with a grain of salt. These things may help you to release some weight into the world, back into the world. Maybe they're going to help you gain some more weight. Maybe you're going to stay exactly the same. Regardless, I want you to learn how you can better balance your nervous system because that is what's really important. That matters. That matters. Your weight doesn't, but your nervous system does. So let's dig into this a little bit after my 6.5-minute spiel. And the discussion about bringing balance to your nervous system has a lot to do with the vagal nerve. If you've taken yoga classes from me, you have heard about the vagal nerve so many times that you're probably sick to death of it. But guess what? You're going to hear about it a little bit again. Again, I am really oversimplifying some of these things just because you only need to have the bare bones information regarding them to sort of understand the situation. So your vagal nerve is also called the wandering nerve. It is the longest nerve in the body, and it kind of meanders from the base of your skull down your torso. It has some interaction with most, if not all, of the vital organs of your body. And it is what we consider a reset button. So it is what helps us reset our nervous system. It's what helps to keep track of, or what's the word I'm looking for here? Dictates the sympathetic versus parasympathetic switches back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. So you want to have what's called good vagal tone. And when you have good vagal tone, you're able to just hit that reset button going from sympathetic to parasympathetic, parasympathetic to sympathetic, and just flip-flopping back and forth. That is what allows us to do that. So we want to make sure that our vagal nerve is in pretty good working order. How do we do that? Well, we're going to cycle back to that a little bit later, but we're going to just go back to the general nervous system here. General nervous system, and how I talked a few minutes ago about how one of the side effects of stress and increased cortisol, which comes as a release when we're stressed, can be weight gain. And again, this is not a weight loss episode by any means, but I'm going to reference a study here that does talk about weight and fat loss because I think it's relevant to the conversation because of the connection with cortisol levels. So the University of California did a study. I'm afraid I don't have the year right here in front of me, so I apologize for that. But it was a 48-week study. And what they did is they studied the impact of restorative yoga classes versus just a regular stretching class. So in restorative yoga, we tend to get into a pose and stay there for a while. And we use all of the props so that you can fully relax. So should be no inch of you that is not supported when you're in a restorative class. So it was a 48-week study. And what this study found was that in the first 6 months of the study, those who were in the restorative class lost nearly 2 times the amount of weight and were better able to keep it off. And those in the restorative class lost more than 2.5 times the amount of subcutaneous fat. So they lost more than 2 times the amount of weight as the other group and more than 2.5 times the amount of fat as the first group. So like I said, this isn't about weight loss, but this study followed that, and I don't have all of the details right in front of me. Again, I apologize. I didn't pull up the study and read it clear through. I just have my own notes from the last time I looked at it, and I am assuming that there was no other dietary changes aside from what changes may have happened naturally as a result of being in a restorative class or being in a general stretch class. But what they really attributed the change was a reduce in cortisol and a reduction in stress levels overall. Because a stretching class, while you're still stretching the body, it's not the same as a restorative yoga class, but you're still stretching, working on flexibility. It didn't have the same impact because it didn't provide that same reduction in stress and reduction in overall cortisol levels. And that's partly because in a restorative yoga class, we also concern ourselves with vagal tone, the vagus nerve. Many times a restorative class or any yoga class will have specific music that maybe has the right vibrational energy, because vibration impacts vagal tone. It may have some essential oils, scent. We're going to talk about that again in a minute. Also can impact vagal tone. So all of these things. So it's really interesting because neither one of those activities is a calorie burning aerobic activity. You don't think of a restorative yoga class as an activity that is going to aid in weight loss. But because it helps to reduce stress, helps reduce those cortisol levels, helps bring balance back to the nervous system, that was a byproduct. It wasn't the goal. It was the goal of the study. It's not the goal of restorative yoga to make you lose weight. It is the goal of restorative yoga to help bring restoration back into the body, including balancing the nervous system. So I just thought that was really interesting because so many times studies have to do with diet or this really heavy type of exercise, running or elliptical. And elliptical is easy on the body, but it's still an aerobic exercise, right? So I thought that was really interesting that just that differentiation between restorative yoga and stretching made so much of an impact on reducing overall stress and cortisol levels. And let me tell you, if you have not taken a restorative yoga class, oh gosh, they're delightful. Gosh, they're delightful. I haven't taken the 4-day training on restorative yoga yet. I hope to. I hope they leave virtual options up for another year or two for virtual trainings, because it's just so hard to get some of these trainings when you live in the middle of nowhere. Anyway, it's a pricey course, but I hope that I can get it because I really would like to bring more restorative into my offerings. However, I digress. Restorative yoga, because of how it helps to bring balance back to the nervous system versus just regular stretching, had such a profound impact, and I find that so fascinating. So, cortisol, stress reduction, so important. But it's pretty hard for most of us to find time to do a restorative yoga class on the daily. And some of you are like, girl, even if I could, I don't want to. That's fine. That's cool. It's not for everybody. I get that. But what is something that we can do? And this answer is going to be very individual. What is something that you can do? So something that you're going to thoroughly enjoy, something you're going to look forward to doing, something that will help reduce stress and therefore help reduce cortisol. Not with the goal of weight loss, though that may happen, but at the goal of balancing the nervous system. And I'll tell you what mine is. Mine is a little thing called going for a walk. And I'm talking like a stroll walk. Like I am not huffing it at all. I'm just meandering my way down the sidewalk, listening to a podcast, not thinking about work, not thinking about anything that I have to do, just listening to somebody talk and going outside, hopefully in the sun. It's not always in the sun, obviously. But in just enjoying some fresh air, being outside, number one, is a great way to help bring balance to your nervous system. So maybe you can't or don't want to go for a walk, but you can go outside on nice days and sit in the sun for 10 minutes. That is going to do a lot for you. If you can move while outside, that's great too. I'm not going to say it's better, because depending on the situation, it may not be better. But for me, I really enjoy going for a walk. Some days it's 10 minutes, some days it's an hour. Really depends on what's going on in that day, what the weather's like, and what I feel like. And I don't do it every single day, but most days I try to get out even for a really short walk. So it really makes me feel so much more relaxed, because when you think about it, yeah, I exercise a lot. But whenever I'm exercising, I tend to be teaching a class, and I have so many things running through my head at any given time. It is not relaxing. It is not relaxing for me to teach a class. Sure, teaching a certain style of yoga might be relaxing on the body. It's not relaxing on my mind. So going for a walk, especially if it's a stroll, is relaxing for me. That might not be the answer for you. Maybe, I don't know, reading a book, maybe a shower. I'm not a shower person. I do also love having a bath, but I don't feel it gives me the same decompression as a walk does. It can be a million different things, but it's really important that we all have a couple of things in our back pocket that we know are A, easily accessible, B, easily implementable, whew, that was a bit of a mouthful, and C, is something that you can see yourself doing most, if not all days. It doesn't have to be the same thing every day. Maybe for you, it's getting up early in the morning and drinking a cup of coffee before everybody else gets up. But we need to figure out what a couple of these simple things are, because I don't want you spending a whole bunch of money or any money on this. I don't want you having to carve out hours of your week to do this. And I don't want you to need to go somewhere to do it. If you have to travel 20 minutes to do your stress relief, well, then that's 40 minutes round trip plus however long it takes you to do the thing. It's so much harder to find time for that than it is to find time to go outside and sit in the sun for 5 minutes, even if you have to tell your kids that you're going to the car to look for something and then just hide for 5 minutes. I don't pretend to know what it's like to have children, but I feel strongly that sometimes one must hide from them in order to do these things. If they will not leave you alone otherwise, I feel it is okay to hide. All right, so that is number one, is you need some sort of stress reducing activity that you can do on the daily. Doing it once or twice a week is great. I would rather you go for a 5-minute walk every day than go for a 1-hour walk once a week. I'd rather you get that small little dose of stress reduction every day than get one bigger one and have that have to do for an entire week, okay? So think of some simple things. They don't have to be complicated. In fact, the less complicated they are, the better. So that's number one. The number one thing I want you to do to start to bring balance back to your nervous system is find or discover or whatever an activity that is stress relieving for you. We've done this before. We've talked about this before. But things that when you think of them or when you're doing them, your body's just like, like, oh, this is so nice. And no, I don't always want to go for a walk, but you know what? During my walk, I always feel that, this is nice. That's what you're looking for. This is nice. Okay, number two. This is a good one. Remember we talked about scents very briefly earlier, and I'm talking SCENTS scents, not SENSE scents. Okay, so the smellers. So we all have a few favorite scents, and that is something that can help us with stress reduction. So there's lots and lots of graphs and charts about the best scent for dealing with different things. And yes, some scents are better for different emotional issues than others. But for the purpose of this, all I want you to do is think of a couple scents that you love the smell of and that you can get in natural form. So I'm not hating. I have a couple Scentsy burners. I mean, it takes me 3 years to go through one Scentsy bar because I use so little of it. But those aren't the kind of scents I'm talking about because those are largely artificial, I assume. I assume those are not natural scents. I could be wrong, but I don't think that I am. I'm talking about natural ones. So one that I really love is citrus. Fortunately, citrus, to get an essential oil of citrus, is really inexpensive because, as we know from juicing an orange, that oil, you can smell it, right? So citrus is one that tends to be something that makes a lot of people feel happy. So maybe you want to invest in an essential oil like wild orange or something that you can smell that will just make you, again, have that feeling. Lavender is another one for many people. I really enjoy the scent of lavender, but it doesn't give me that same feeling as citrus does. Another one, though, is coffee. I love the smell of fresh coffee beans. Like, I will just smell the bag of coffee beans. So if you want to talk about an easy, accessible scent, if you enjoy the the smell of coffee, that might be one of your ones. But scents really have an impact on our mood and our stress levels. So finding a couple scents that you really enjoy, that you can enjoy in their natural state. Maybe you want to just buy some oranges and have an orange as an afternoon snack and like smell the orange. I don't care. But I want you to think of a couple natural scents that you really love. Fresh cut grass. Oh, that's good. It's hard to get that naturally in the winter, but that's a good one. I just remember I smelled that yesterday when I was on my walk. It was delightful. Anyway, scents, a couple scents that you really like that can also help to reduce stress levels and help bring balance back to the nervous system, believe it or not. And the third, oh, so boring, deep breathing. Deep, slow breathing. Remember, we're going for things that are easily accessible here. So on a day, okay, let's take me for example. So on a day when maybe I can't go for a walk, the stars just have not aligned for the day, I want to have a couple other options for things that I can do to help keep my balance, my nervous system in balance. So I can't go for a walk, but I can take 2 seconds to smell a bottle of essential oil. I can find 60 seconds to just focus on deep breathing. And no, they aren't all the same. And honestly, I can't even tell you which one is the most impactful. If you ask me, the walk is the most impactful in the way I feel about it. But that doesn't mean that it would be for you. And I don't even know how you would truly measure that yourself. But you'll know the things that make you feel good versus the things that don't. And I know deep breathing is just so, like, of course, she's going to say deep breathing. But it really can make a difference. Especially if you breathe in through the nose and out through the nose. Or breathe in through the nose and out through the mouth and let out an audible sigh. Don't do this if there's a lot of people around because they're going to think there's something like they're in trouble or something. Maybe they are. But if you take a nice deep breath in and a big out, and do that 3 or 4 times and you will feel better. Because you know what? Your brain knows that if you are actively running from a saber-toothed tiger, you're going to be taking quick, shallow breaths. That's how we stay in our sympathetic. If we take a few deep rib expanding breaths, they're deep and long, your body knows, well, she can't be running from a saber-toothed tiger. She doesn't have time to take breaths like that. If she's running from a saber-toothed tiger, we can just pop back into our parasympathetic. And no, it's not necessarily that simple. But that is a really great tip. So a couple other things I'm going to leave you with. Some other things that you can do to help bring balance to your nervous system is talking about the vagal nerve again. One way to help improve vagal tone is by using a weighted eye pillow. It doesn't have to be super heavy. You just make a little simple tube, Oda fabric, fill it with flaxseed or lentils. One I have is filled with lentils, and I really like that one. So it's not very heavy, but it feels good on your eyes, and it helps to improve vagal tone. Deep, slow breathing also helps with vagal tone. Descent, walking, or whatever your joyful activity is, whether it's hiding from your kids in a closet, whatever, no judgment from me, but whatever makes you go, And then, of course, we have to talk a little bit about our lymphatic system, because if everything is stuck and stagnant, we're going to have some blockage issues. So remember, your lymphatic system does not have a pump like a heart, nor does it have peristalsis, which is the tightening and releasing of muscles, like your digestive system, like your intestines, that helps move fecal matter out of the body. It doesn't have either of those. So how does your lymphatic system get moving? Well, it gets moving when you move it. So things like, again, walking, yoga, breath work, general moving, massage if you can afford it, even like spending some time in the shower or in a whirlpool, or dry brushing. Those are all ways that you can get that lymphatic system moving. And the thing that's important about the lymphatic system is it's kind of like our body's garbage disposal. So it kind of just gets rid of some of that other junk. It's not the same as, going to the bathroom, because that's removing excess matter that we've consumed. But your lymphatic system helps get rid of some of the other junk. So as we're doing some of these things, trying to bring balance back into our system, we want to also make sure that our lymphatic system is working for us. So if you are going for a walk outside, you're getting that outside aspect, you're getting that movement aspect, you're getting that stress reduction. But again, we're not talking about a hiking. I don't mean a hike. I mean, you're not like pushing it, trying to go really fast. You're not looking to get your heart rate up here. You're looking just to move. Just looking to move. I actually watch my watch to make sure that I don't go very fast. It is a legit stroll. Like a 3-year-old could keep up with me because I'm going so slow. Anyway, those are a couple of tips on how you can start to bring balance back into your nervous system without having to go out and buy anything, invest in anything, or do anything crazy, unless you want to go buy like an essential oil or something. Finding a couple scents that you enjoy, finding a couple activities that you can do on the spur of the moment from your house that give you that feeling while you're doing them. And breathing. That's it for today's episode. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope maybe it's helped you think a little bit differently about movement, because when we think about stress reduction, sometimes we only think about some of those more rigorous types of exercise. And going back to that study that we talked about at the beginning, just knowing that the people in the restorative class lost so much more weight and fat versus the people in the stretch class when their caloric expenditure was probably pretty close to the same. It just speaks so many volumes. That's it for today's episode. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I will talk to you next week.